My name is Bill Fennessy. Good morning. I work currently for the California Afterschool Network as a specialist in equity and quality. The focus of most of my work, though we all do a little bit of everything, don't we, Malia? We all do a little bit of everything, is actually high school programs and workforce, both workforce for our young people and getting them prepared for the workforce, as well as working with our workforce in expanded learning. So those are kind of my focuses. I have been in education 25 years. I have been doing expanded learning for 20 years now. And most of it in the last 18 doing high school programs, assets programs. But for those of you that may have done high school or assets programs, you realize you learn a lot of ACES stuff because there's more of those folks than there are of our folks. And so we all get to pick that up along the way. Really happy to be hosting today this webinar on financial literacy, because I know in working with high school students, and not to say financial literacy couldn't begin before then, but how really important it is for them as they become young adults and adults in trying to successfully navigate society, successfully navigate finances. A lot of challenges out there, a lot of folks, quite frankly, trying to trap them into some things, and some basic knowledge that we would hope they have that perhaps they actually play forward or pass up to their parents and so on and so forth. So a really, really important, very important subject, and I'm glad we're touching on it. Financial well-being is a growing problem for today's youth. We know from research that young people who are financially literate make much better decisions regarding their future finances. However, most young people, especially youth of color, lack access to financial literacy information. This is referred to as America's financial literacy gap. And we know that after-school programs are especially well positioned to address the need for financial literacy. We have the kids nationally. 10.2 million young people participate in programs. This webinar will feature after-school practitioners who have successfully integrated financial literacy into their programs. And it will also feature financial literacy experts on why financial literacy is important for youth, available curriculum and materials, and how to get started offering financial literacy in your after-school program. So deep and wide. As we go along, because folks come with questions oftentimes, folks with burning questions and things they wanted to hope to attain during the webinar. So please feel free to enter any of your questions or comments into the chat box. There's no good time or bad time to do it. I would suggest the good time is when it's foremost on your mind. If we end up getting to it in the presentation, so be it. But we want to make sure that when everybody leaves, that if they came with a burning question, that we answered in some way, shape, right, that we answered it, that you got what you came for. So again, please feel free to use the chat box. If necessary, if it's just really killing you, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and acknowledge that as well, because I'm sure the panelists here would love to impart the great knowledge and things that they've learned to you, especially because it means something to you. So without further ado, we have a number of speakers here. Our first speaker, well, let me introduce everybody. Okay. Our first speaker is Martha Cordero, Director of High School Programs for World Fit for Kids, somebody who's a dear friend and a colleague. So I'm super excited to see Martha here with us today. Also, Patrick Miller. Patrick is a Teen Program Director for Urban Services in San Francisco YMCA. Glad to have him. Christian Sherrill, Director of Growth and Advocacy for Next Gen Personal Finance. Also, Alex Mazloum, Co-founder and Executive Director of Mind Treasures. And then Lauren Needle. And Lauren, the CEO and founder of Lauren Needle Advisors, that I believe helps companies and organizations deliver significant impact. So really, really super happy to have all. I think what I'll do first, actually, I think what we'll do is just go through each one of you, and I'll ask you some similar questions, and hopefully you can this will help you present your work and answer questions folks might have. So Martha, you've worked extensively with the World Fit for Kids for 16 years. You've done amazing work there. Can you describe what financial literacy offerings you have in your program?
You. Well, one of the main things that a World Fit for Kids does is we focus on the entire individual, and this also includes their families. So, one of the main things that we do, because we focus on physical fitness, on making sure that the person is healthy, this includes financial literacy. So, one of the main things that we do and how we focus on financial literacy is through health. So through our nutrition programs, that's how we started our financial literacy. And then when we started going further into our work with high school students and we did our work readiness, that's when we started to have the students ask us questions on what is it that they want to learn. And we talked about taxes and how to read a check. And one of the main things that we want to come across from kindergarten all the way to high school is empowering them on having the skills to know what is a what is a healthy way of life, what is a balance. So how to detect fraud, what is it that those predatory lending practices, what is out there that can harm them, that can set them back. So one of our main things this year specifically is really focusing on paying attention to what the community has and how to help our students navigate that. Hopefully I answered that question.
No, of course you did. And I think you alluded to it, but what are the ages that you serve? And of those ages, which do you focus, or what levels of financial literacy do you have for those age groups or grades?
We currently have TK through high school. So all of our programs are really focused on the specific grade levels. So with TK, it's just understanding what money is and really focusing on needs and wants. And as we progress to the older students, it's still focusing on the needs and wants because as you get older, you want more. And we want them to understand that, yeah, there is a difference. One of the main things, and I keep saying the main things and the main focus is it's not a competition or it's not looking at someone else outside, but it's really focusing on the individual and what is it that they want to stress and goal. For a lot of our youth, they don't really see a future. So it's really coming back and developing that self-talk, that self-care, that mindset to be able to then focus on finances. Because again, a lot of our students, they don't see that. They're struggling with other things. So financial literacy, even though they want to know and want to have, access to it, sometimes there's a block. So it's really focusing on the individual, making sure that they're fit so that they could then lead a fulfilling life.
So let me take that a little further to provide some context. Maybe you could describe for the audience what is the demographic and group that you typically work with, because everybody works with a different group. So I think it would provide some context as to perhaps why you approach these things this way.
We're located in downtown LA. We do have some schools that are further out, but our demographics are mostly Latino-based or Latinx individuals. We have a large population that are newcomers, that are undocumented. We have a lot of students that are under the poverty line. So we're working with students that are struggling. We have students that are in the foster care system. We also have a lot of students that are houseless. So we're working with a population that is struggling, especially after the pandemic. We got hit hard. Like everyone, but our students really showed that effect.
Thank you, Martha.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's important because you work in the very central part of Los Angeles, right? So
Yes.
very hard hit. So who leads the financial literacy groups? Does it your existing staff or others from the outside? And if it is from the outside, who are the volunteers and people that you contract with?
We do have a lot of our own coaches. That's what we call our frontline staff, leading certain financial aspects of it or lessons. And then we also bring in speakers to talk about certain topics. We really pay attention to what the students are asking about, and then we try to find individuals that would then target that topic.
Awesome. And what are the partners that you have enlisted, the partners that you described? What are their roles and what is their focus?
We have a lot of individuals that are entrepreneurials, business owners. We have individuals that are from banks. And their focus, again, is to just answer the questions that the students have and share their stories. We try to find individuals that are of the same, that come from the same communities that our students are from, so that they then can see themselves and see what is possible. We also make sure that the individuals that we bring in don't have like an alternative agenda. Like if we bring in a bank, it's not like we want them to open bank accounts. It's that we want the information to be provided to our students so that then they are aware of the opportunities that are out there. We also link ourselves to a lot of NGOs that are focusing on immigration and dreamers, so that they can also then provide that information from that particular focus
Awesome. Thank you.
point.
Now you talked about curriculum developed by others because others obviously have their own curriculum.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I do believe you also have the curriculum that you've also created, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk
Yes.
to us about perhaps what others are delivering curriculum wise and perhaps what you as an organization are providing?
Mhm. So when we are focusing on our curriculum, it's really, again, student focused, student driven. So we focus on learning how to, do taxes. What does taxes mean? How do you read a paycheck? What is it that you're going to be doing when you're, developing a budget? So it's really catered to what those individuals or those students want. Where at the high school level, we start with ninth graders, and then we get a little bit more focused with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, especially because at 10th grade, we start to focus on, okay, financial aid. What does that mean if I want to go to college? What is out there that can benefit me without putting me in debt? A lot of our students, like I mentioned, they don't see themselves going to college because they're like, I can't afford that. It's like, so what is it that we give them is really focusing on helping them also research online. Because we could give them all the information, but if they don't know how to gather that information by themselves or for themselves, then it stops there. So it's really working with the student to navigate, okay, what sources are there so that they can help themselves once we're out of the picture. Not that we want to be out of the picture, but once they graduate, they're like, I want to be on my own. And they're like, great, let me give you all the resources and the how to, so that when you are on your own, you don't feel like you're by yourself. So it's really helping them navigate, okay, what sources, teaching them how to find opportunities that are going to benefit them. And then for the middle schoolers, the same way. It's like, having them think about, okay, what is it that I want for my future? And how do you see yourself getting that? I've had a lot of students that are like, oh, miss, I'm going to be in jail. It's like, or I'm going to go to prison. I'm like, what's that story that they're telling them? What's that narrative that they're already, putting the foundation down, so that we could shift that and make them, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Oh, I'm going to be, I'm going to be a business owner. And we've seen it work with our high schools, that once we put the idea that like you could work for yourself, you don't have to work for others, but then how are you going to manage your money? Again, we've had a lot of students that have become, selling their wares, their ideas on the internet, and are like, wow, miss, I could afford college because now I'm doing this. And that's not oh, it took me years. This is like during the summer, I was able to do this. So it works, So bringing those kids back to be speakers so that they can, then showcase what they were doing, how they drive themselves to be able to focus on that. So our curriculum really focuses on the individual. So it shifts from, it's not like this is what we're doing, year and year. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is our foundation. And this is how we tweak it for, each school and each semester. And then the curriculum that the other organizations bring, we do work with JA, which brings a curriculum for financial literacy. And that's usually what we use for the younger ones because it's already developed, it's already tested, and it's just a recognition of like, okay, how do I function in this world? We do games, we do role play, and like I said, we bring speakers and we bring the students back so that they could tell their story. We also bring the students back where they're like, yeah, I didn't pay attention and I messed up and this is what's happening. And having students be able to tell their highs and their lows also helps everybody else realize that this is not perfect, and that it's a growing skill. So even if you fumble, you can still get up.
Beautiful. Well said, Martha. Thank you. Um, Before I move on to the next guest, I want to make sure I have enough time to let you present or talk about anything else that I may not have asked about, or that you want to make sure that everybody got to hear this morning.
Thank you. Well, if I just want to let you guys know that a world fit for kids, we focus on the entire individual. And when it's going to look, our financial literacy is going to look so much different than all the others because we really focus on like a health-centered health. So how is it that if you're healthy, what does your financial literacy look like? What does your finance image and mindset look like? And if you're not, how does that affect your finances? So everything is linked with us. If one of the things that this year we are really focusing on is not just necessarily okay, what do I do with my money, but really shifting that mindset from like, I'm working to get money to I want to have wealth. And wealth and health for us is really linked together. So what is that mindset? What is that shift to being wealthy, being healthy, to I just have money? So that is something that is a bit tricky because, like I mentioned, we're dealing with or we're working with a lot of individuals that have a particular narrative already set, and we're dealing with that kind of block. So what we want to do is be able to work with students, with families, with the community to break that, to have them be able to engage in other things that are out there, but that they might seem or might be limited to. So we're approaching it from a health-based opportunity to gain financial wealth.
Awesome. Martha, thank you. Well done. Appreciate you. All right. We're going to move on to our next speaker. That's Patrick Miller, the Teen Programs Director and Urban Services at the San Francisco YMCA. And Patrick's a passionate transformational developer of community leaders dedicating to equipping young people with the fundamental knowledge to identify and pursue their passion and purpose. And at the Y, Patrick is excited about creatively developing and implementing comprehensive programs for youth and young adults contributing to their professional and personal success. His focus is to foster high collaboration, healthy relationships, and community building. Patrick, welcome. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
We're super happy to have you, man. Can you describe for us perhaps the financial literacy offerings in your program?
Yeah, definitely, Bill. I can definitely do that. And I like to kind of start first with who I am,
Sure.
and about what we and how that even guides me to do what I do.
Absolutely.
One of my earliest dreams was for me to always be a hero. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a hero, and I'm not talking about like I give you my parking spot or I held the door open for you. Like I wanted to stop a burglary in process, like that type of hero. And it actually led me to one day applying to be to apply to be a part of the Oakland PD. And I went through the whole process, and I passed all the exams, except I got to this point where I got stopped up. And I know my name says Patrick Miller, but I found out at the age of 21 that my name was not Patrick Miller. I found out that my name was Kokmiel Gabriel Avraham. Unbeknownst to me, 7 years back, my mom changed my name without telling me, because her goal was, her and my grandparents, I was living with my grandparents at the time. Her goal was to kidnap me from my grandparents, move me to Atlanta, and change my name so they couldn't find me. And so here I am in the middle of this hiring process, trying to go through to become Oakland PD, and I don't even know my name. And I'm going through this process, and I'm like, this is literally, I don't know if this is what stopped me from becoming an Oakland police officer, but I'm sure it had a huge impact on it. And so when I looked at why in the world would my mom do something like this? Well, my mom grew up during a time where my grandparents weren't really uh, available because of drug addiction, because of poverty, because of work, and all those different things. And so she experienced a lot of trauma, and that trauma then caused her to then have those same type of reactions. I mean, so even having me at a young age, she could not afford to actually like raise me. And so she would often drop me off at my grandparents' house, and then this struggle for who was going to actually raise me or keep me started to kind of ensue. Um, so when I think about the young people and I think about the things that I am doing and the work that I'm doing, I'm not just serving these young people who are distant, but I'm actually serving, like I see it as I'm serving myself. Like a lot of the young people that we serve and a lot of young people that we're working with, like they often are a reflection of me, regardless of what ethnic background they're coming from. There are a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges that they are facing that often are like a reflection of the things that I'm going through. And so at the Y, I am a teen director, and that means a lot of different things. And I oversee a couple of different programs that aren't even teens, but one of the programs that I oversee is the Youth Empowerment Fund. And this fund is something that is set up for us to give. It's funds taken directly from taxpayer dollars that's given to young people. And young people, we hire high schoolers and we train them how to read and score grants. And then they give out over $100,000 worth of grants to other young people in the city. As adults, we have no choice or no decision-making power on how those funds are used. We kind of set the guidelines, but our young people are making the decisions. And so our young people have the opportunity to become philanthropists within their city and become decision makers on the type of work that's happening in our city. And while this is happening, typically we have this down period in January and February where we don't really have grants that are given out. And we ask our young people, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? What are the things that you're interested in? And every single time our young people say, I don't know, like when I'm done with high school, I don't know what to do with my finances. Like I don't know how to get an apartment. I don't know what are the things that I should be looking at. And this is a question that has come up time and time again. And so as we've been working this program, we've been implementing financial literacy into this program. And one of the things that I've come across when working with my coordinators and that I realized is that a lot of my coordinators, my adult staff who are leading our young people in this financial literacy, do not have financial literacy for themselves. They do not have the knowledge or the tools for themselves to be able to say, here are the things that, like, from my experience, here are some of the things that I know. We can try to pull resources in, we can try to bring knowledge, we can try to bring experts in, but at the end of the day, our staff don't even have the financial literacy for themselves oftentimes. And one of the things that we found in the pandemic was that everybody realized that like mental health was this big deal. This is something that we really needed to focus on. And something that came up was that, well, our adult staff, they have to be mentally well, or they have to have mental wellness for themselves in order for them to support the mental wellness of our young people. Well, then I think it's the same with financial literacy. We cannot expect our adult staff to support our young people with financial literacy if they don't have financial literacy for themselves. And so one of the things that I've been working on in a project, I have the opportunity to be a part of Emerging Global Leaders Institute. That's something that the Y started within the YUSA. And this is a part of our global diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I get to have the opportunity to kind of go through this project and learn about diversity from from San Francisco across the states to even what's happening globally in this movement. And one of the things that I'm implementing now as a project within our Y is how do we start to bring financial literacy to the people who are serving our young people? Because just like me, a lot of the young people within a lot of the adult staff in our organization are people from the community. These are people who are a part of in their schools, in their neighborhoods, and the Y was this program that served them. And they're like, just like me, when I grow up, I want to be a hero. And so they found ways to say, hey, I want to be a part of the why. I want to do this work as well. And so one of the things that I know to be true is that we cannot tell our young people, like, hey, financial literacy is important. It's important for you to find financial freedom. It's important for you to implement these goals. And then they become adult staff. And then we're like, well, now here are some of your priorities. You got to focus on work. You got to get these things done. And this is what it looks like, right? Then they start to realize that, like, wait, are the things that you've been telling me as a young person, are those things true? And one of those things that we talk about is that financial literacy leads to financial freedom, but financial freedom is really about time freedom. To be able to have the time, to be able to have the financial well-being, to be able to say, I can do what I want to do. I can be what I want to be, and I can go after things that I want to go after. But in order for me to do that, I have to have the time, which means I have to have the financial well-being to be able to make that happen. And so within the why, one of the things that we're focusing on is how do we start to implement financial literacy into the why for our staff at every level. And so currently right now, we're in the process of implementing a staff assessments survey so that we can start to understand financially where our staff, because the goal, one of the priorities for the why is that we want to provide financial and social and economic mobility. And so we believe that those things go hand in hand. Social and economic mobility go hand in hand. And so we're trying to understand where people's social and economic mobility, where do they perceive their own social and economic mobility, and how do we start to implement resources and tools that are necessary for our staff to move into a place where they are able to take advantage of their own financial well-being. And then that is going to create an impact where we're going to see that the things that we're teaching our young people isn't just head knowledge, but it's heart knowledge. These are the things that they actually believe and practice on their own. So yeah, some of the work that we're doing is like really understanding, like, we can no longer say we want our young people to be well and we're not investing in our staff to be able to say, hey, you need to be well, your finances need to be well. And that's not just about saying, here's our retirement plan, right? Make sure you're invested in a retirement plan. Nobody's gonna, you could say that all day long and no one's gonna invest in a retirement plan until they understand that what it actually means for them to invest in their retirement plan. And one of the things that moves me to do the work that I do, I recently sat back and started doing some math. Because as a young person who was raised by my grandparents, my grandfather always told me, hey, you got to work hard, get you a good job that's going to make you some money so that you can retire and do the things that you want to do. One of the scariest things that I started to realize currently, and I think this is maybe for the millennials, some new research that's coming out says that the average life expectancy for a lot of the young people now would probably be around 76. That's scary, especially when you think that most of us are going to work 42 years of our life, which means that that's over 55% of our time is going to be spent working. And the rest of that time is going to be split with the time we were young people and the time that we retire. That means 17.1 years. So that means we're working 42 years of our life to get 17 years of freedom to do what we want. Like that's scary to me. That isn't, the ROI doesn't work out for me on that end, right? And so what I start to say is like, hey, like, our young people are passionate. Our young people, one of the things we found this year is that our young people are driven by purpose. They don't want a job where they're just doing work to make money so they can eventually go and do what they want right now, to know that the work that they're doing is impact. And one of the things that we say, like, you might not find that one job that's going to bring you the financial well-being you need to be able to do the things that you want to do. That's why we believe in multiple streams of income, right? And we believe that it's not just, we can't just rely on one job being our source of income, but freeing ourselves to say, how do we start to tap into entrepreneurialism? How do we tap into solo entrepreneurialism so that we can start to create the financial freedom so that we can do the work that we want to do within the community? I'm sorry, I know I said a lot, but I'll stop and pause there.
Well, first off, don't apologize for a damn thing. Okay. So, like, dude, that was some inspirational minutes right there. I'm just gonna tell you right up front, like, that's huge, man. I sincerely appreciate where you're coming from. Wow, what a story. You leave me almost dumbfounded to my next question, my man. Wow. So, do you all come up with this curriculum on your own? Do you bring other partners in, Patrick? How do you weave, and how do you present what you do and how you support these young people in financial literacy? Maybe some nuts and bolts or some kind of how you do it kind of thing. Because Clearly, you're an inspired man, so I'm anxious to hear what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I would say it always starts from heart for us. Like we always start from like understanding what are our young people saying and what do they need, and then us taking the time to research what that might look like, right? So how do we figure out, because we might not even always have the answers. So what does that actually look like? Are there people out there who have the answers? And yeah, for the at the Y, we are definitely in a place now where we're looking for collaboration with other CBOs, and working with other people who are doing the work. And one of the things that we believe is that there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom out there. And so a lot of times that information doesn't always look traditional. Like we might not always go to those who are the finances, right, to be able to say like, hey, like how do we do this and how do we set this up? One of my favorite authors, Tim Ferriss, says that, you know, the goal isn't to be a millionaire. Really, people don't want to be a millionaire. They just want to live like a millionaire, right? Like, what does that look like for us, right? And there are people who are doing that without having all of the money, right? Like they're figuring out how to do that. And one of the biggest resources that we know is time. The biggest resource we have is time. And so how do we, if it's not about money, what does time look like? And so we start to kind of pull in people who are doing the work, who are already making it happen. But then we pull in some other people, educators in the communities, and we try to make in the community and make it happen as well. So yeah, there's a mix, right? There's us taking the time to research on our own and educate ourselves, which is why as we're doing this research and we're seeking out the answers, we find that like, oh, there's some things that we don't know ourselves, right? And there's some things that we haven't been abreast to, and now we take the time to go and connect with those who are who are already doing that work to bring in that financial knowledge. So, but we definitely try to start with like our own selves and doing the research on our own, so that we can bring it in. So we're not just bringing in and saying like, here's a bunch of information, but we allow it to impact ourselves first.
Wow, phenomenal, man. Thank you. And as a 65-year-old who put his 42 years in to get his 17, I've decided I'm working to 70, man. You make me feel bad about my ROI, but my years in the field have been impactful, so I feel great value in that. So my balance might be a little different, but I hear you, man. I hear you.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what it's all about. Doing the things that you're passionate about.
Right, exactly. Then you're not working, right? You're not working. Patrick, I appreciate you. That's very inspiring. I think a lot of people took note of this morning of what you spoke about. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. And wow, this has been great so far. It's probably only going to get better, folks. Our next speaker is Christian Sherrill, Director of Growth and Advocacy for Next Gen. Former teacher, former financial education nerd. I want to hear more about that. And Christian is laser focused on high school graduation stage. Very cool. Having paid down 40K in student loans in the span of 3 years while living in the Bay Area. Is that even possible? You have to be one of a kind, my friend. On an entry-level teacher salary, and he's eager to help the next generation avoid the financial pitfalls one semester at a time. Wow, very topical, very good. Christian, welcome. Before I ask you any questions, let me give you a chance to start off and talk about who you are and what you're doing, why you're fired up.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. A couple, factors that helped on the student loan repayment part of my story were there's a sandwich, put peanut butter and jelly on, some like white or wheat bread, and have that for 3 meals a day.
Okay.
And then, I also lived in squalor, as well. And scrimped and saved as much as I possibly could until I, straight up ran out of money. And so I have always been struck by the notion that, by and large, historically, we haven't taught young people about money, careers, in school, and that strikes me as wrong. So I am really proud to represent an organization and do the work that I do today, which I'm, honored to be able to share with this group today, to hopefully over time close that gap such that every student is getting a personal finance education in school, and then with great leaders like yourselves after school as well. So yeah, thrilled to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. So what does your org offer? What are you doing? Give us the nuts and tell us all about what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're called Next Gen Personal Finance, and we are on a mission. We call it Mission 2030, and that is that by the year 2030, every U.S. high schooler will take at least one semester of a comprehensive personal finance course before they graduate from high school. We started in 2013, and there's a really cool story based in the Bay Area as well. Back in 2013, the co-founder of NGPF, his name is Tim Ranzetta. He started volunteer teaching a financial literacy class with a group of students out of East Palo Alto, California. These students were first-generation college applicants. And so when Tim started teaching this, volunteer personal finance class with this crew of students, he noted that even students who were having trouble in some of their other courses were really engaged in the financial literacy class, because finally, for some of the students, it felt real and relevant for, this is actually going to help me and, live my life and thrive in the future. And then the other thing that he spotted was that students were taking what they were learning in the financial literacy class and bringing it home, talking with loved ones, friends, and family about what they were learning in class, and starting this kind of multi-generational ripple effect of conversations about money and investing and credit and careers that students, without starting that conversation, that was the first time, that students were speaking with their loved ones about these topics. So Tim thought, what an empowering, opportunity for him as an educator, for his students in the class, and bringing it home, and wanted to, expand out that impact to as many classrooms as possible. So Tim set up an endowment, which funds all of our organization, again, Next Gen Personal Finance, and it covers the three, primary areas of work. We write free curriculum for personal finance that it turns out a lot of after school coordinators and program directors use our curriculum, in large part because it's free and open access, super easy to come grab and make use of what you like and leave what you don't. We also run professional development for free for educators. Patrick discussed this notion that a lot of adults, including financial literacy educators, never took a financial literacy class, because historically we have not offered this as a nation. And a lot of us, myself included, as you probably noted from my student loan story, like we learn from stumbling, into mistakes, and those are really costly. And so this all leaves a lot of adults, educators included, kind of timid sometimes about, broaching the subject of financial literacy with young people. And so how do we, chip away at that challenge? Well, we build confidence and content mastery, among educators. So over the last 3 years, NGPF, and I have been proud to take part in this, we have delivered 400,000 teacher hours of professional development on personal finance concepts, ranging from foundational stuff, budgeting, all the way up through thorny emotional issues around money, like the psychology of money decisions, and behavioral economics, like cognitive biases that make us make wild decisions about money that don't serve us. And so we're really proud of the professional development that we're able to offer, and that confidence and content mastery that's building from that. And then the last thing that we do, I'm also proud to take part in this, is we advocate in state legislatures for personal finance to become a graduation requirement. So I grew up in Connecticut, and this spring I got the opportunity to go testify in my home state's education committee in the legislature, and we successfully persuaded the legislature to go ahead and make personal finance a graduation requirement. And that's happened now in 23 states. And so we're, continuing to beat that drum, around the country, and including in California, hoping to keep, beating that drum until we reach Mission 2030, where every student has taken this course. So you can probably tell I'm very proud of the work that we do as it pertains to this group and this webinar today. I think what is likely most useful is the curriculum. So, it's all free and open access. It's written for grades 6 through 12, and it's primarily in Google Drive format. Most schools, it turns out, use Google Docs and Google Sheets and all of the rest, but you can download it in whatever, format you want, so that educators and after-school coordinators can customize the curriculum, make it yours, and make it as relevant and locally relevant and real for your students. It's not all that helpful for, a young person in Oakland to be looking at the average rents in Omaha, right? So we can customize, and make the curriculum really local and relevant for young people. Yeah, Susan, great question in the chat. I apologize, Bill. I don't want to step on your moderation.
No, man, you ain't stepping on me. This is about a conversation. You talk about what you want to talk to. I'm just the guy that got to keep the conversation going. Y'all making me look good, so keep going.
So Susan's question was, I thought 29 states as of June 2023. So the count that I'm referring to of 23 states is 23 states have it as a standalone semester requirement. There are additional states that have, some financial literacy standards embedded within. For example, California theoretically, legally has some financial literacy standards embedded into some other courses. And so if you include those additional states, then you can get up, higher. But we try to maintain this sort of rigorous standard around, hey, it's got to be a standalone, at least semester course for personal finance, because, if you talk to a personal finance teacher, as many folks on the line here, I know you're passionate about this. The question becomes like, if it's less than a semester, what do I not teach? Am I going to not teach young people about investing or credit or insurance or career preparation or budgeting or banking skills? Like, what am I going to cut from that? All of that is relevant and all of that deserves attention. So that's why we have that kind of rigorous standard of, hey, there's 23 states that have it as a standalone semester course. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. This is just getting more and more inspiring as we go on. I'm hearing you say you did systems change in 23 states. I don't know if you realize how hard that is, right? That's incredibly hard. Like in 23 states, like, dude, that's incredible. And I'm inspired by that because as a guy who went through school and didn't feel much of it was relevant in high school, and I think the only thing I learned in economics, because then don't you get government one semester in economics the next semester or vice versa, right? Isn't that how it went? And I'm not mad at anybody, but I'm just going to say from personal experience, I get supply and demand that probably would have taken one day to get me over and figure out, but the things you're talking about are things that people that would have been relevant to me, would have been important to me. I could have put in play. I wouldn't have wanted to fall asleep in class. I would have wanted to learn this because it would have directly affected my life. So I'm just saying that from personal, my little soapbox in the middle of what I'm not supposed to do, but no, thank you. I think it's incredible that you've been able to move the needle like that in 23 states. I think that's just phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Bill. I do want to, drop a caveat there that, it's not like Christian Sherrill is out there, literally on the soapbox, talking to lawmakers in all of these states. There's fantastic work happening in all of these different states, educators, education administrators, and community organizations, coalition building efforts happening all over the place. Because when you ask adults, do you want your kid to learn about, adults with children, right? Do you want your kid to learn about personal finance in school? Resoundingly, the answer is hell yes. Like,
Right.
absolutely. Why aren't we doing this already? But like you alluded to, Bill, systems changes and change in general is pretty scary. And the education system, a lot of demands are placed on it. Teachers have tons of demands placed on them, and so it definitely takes. This is cliche, but it is currently taking a village, a big village, and a big tent of advocates to push for the change. So I am proud to play a small role in that, among that village.
Well, I appreciate your take on that. I do systems change, will lead that with me, but yes, it always takes a team. It's generally right. But I'm just really enthused and excited to hear that the group that you are working with, the team that you are working with, has made that kind of change in 20. That's almost half the states in the union, man. That's freaking incredible. And hey, hope you all keep the ball rolling, because our kids really need it. So thank you. All right. So I think, man, we're pretty close on time, folks. I'm looking good here. You're all doing a great job. And Christian, before I go, anything else you would like to add? Because I certainly don't want to cut you off. If there's anything question I didn't ask or anything I missed, I want to give you an opportunity to sum that up.
Just thank you, because frankly, this is that village that I was referring to. You are doing fantastic work. When I work with teachers, I train teachers in credit and in consumer skills lessons for their students, and I try to always remember that teachers and adults who care about preparing the next generation of young people for the real world, like, you're truly trailblazers and heroes. So Patrick, you are realizing your childhood dream of being a hero. You are maybe not stopping a physical home burglary, but you're stopping, young people's lives and dreams being burgled by the predatory financial landscape that awaits them. So, and that goes for everybody who's here. So thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Wow, a lot of powerful stuff here, folks. Thank you all. Christian, thank you. Incredibly well done, sir. Okay, moving along. And I'm 2 minutes ahead, man. I'm feeling good right now on a Friday, right? Our next speaker, Alex Mesloom, co-founder and executive director of Mind Treasures. And Mind Treasures aims to mentor a generation that acquires, manages, and utilizes various forms of wealth and resources to build healthier and stronger individuals, families, and communities. To achieve this goal, Mind Treasures selects various appropriate curriculums and programs and materials to teach financial literacy, leadership skills, and philanthropy to children, youth, and adults. Mind Treasures strives to provide its services without any socioeconomic, racial, religious, and gender prejudices. All right, Alex, welcome to the party, my friend. It's a great party so far. I think you're going to make it better right now. So what does your org offer, my friends?
So Mind Treasures, our family started it back in 2006. It's myself, my wife, and our 2 boys, and it actually started in our older son's kindergarten class, where we were able to combine financial education with character development. It was started as an after-hour program, but then we've been very lucky to be able to bring the curriculum and our program into the daytime hours since 2011. So that's what we've been doing. Our program encompasses a lot of what everybody has already talked about. There are some unique features in there. Our belief is that our financial affairs start actually at the point of conception in the mother's womb, and there's no end to it. because we can leave a legacy that will carry our name through eternity. So that is the curriculum. I want to concentrate on how we have been doing the program, because I think the biggest challenge for people is, how do I get this thing started? Our material, the ABCs of Wealth, is available as a free download. It's both a PDF printable format, and also, as Christian mentioned, it's a Google Sheet and Google Docs, because all the schools are equipped with the Google Classroom. So what we do, we create an online Google Sheet for every single student that we go into. And then they have access to the individual worksheet. Our organization, Mind Treasures, is a 501c3 that was established in 2007. Currently, we have a staff of 7, and we go into the schools, as I mentioned, during the daytime, into the classroom. This is not something separate that kids have to come. And when we partner up with schools, we usually like to select one grade level and then continue doing the program for that grade level every year. So every child that comes to that school has an opportunity to participate in the program. The curriculum is appropriate for all ages, and we have successfully proven that over the past 18 years. Our personal, the Mind Treasures focus is to do this at elementary schools. We start at grade 3. With the teachers in the classroom with us, our staff go in and deliver the material and the program. It takes 3 months. We do once a week, so there are 12 sessions. That's what we deliver inside the classroom. From the beginning, we had been asking the teachers if they are open to delivering the program and the material on their own, understanding that, as Christian and I think everybody else said, they're under a lot of pressure. They are under pressure to do well in the academics. That's their first concern. So we knew that it would take some time for them to start embracing this curriculum. And this actually happened. Amazingly, earlier this year, 2 of our teachers, one is a 3rd grade teacher and one is a 6th grade teacher, they began to deliver the material on their own as part of the daytime program. Our program is international. We do, particularly since COVID, that adults are becoming more and more accustomed to participating in virtual series. We've been doing a lot of virtual programs internationally from pretty much all over the world. Majority of our participants come from Africa and Asia. We do utilize, our material utilizes, so if you haven't been to our website, please do so. We use this treasure box that teaches the concept of spending, sharing, investing, and saving. And this is what we use in the classroom. Every child gets one of or every participant, I shouldn't say children, every participant gets one of these treasure boxes. We give them play money as allowance. I know the paper money is going out of style, but kids still love it. They enjoy getting the money, splitting it, putting it in different boxes. It makes it very interactive. They have register books where they keep track of their allowance, the goals that they're setting, and how they're going to achieve it. So that is the curriculum. I want to touch upon why we think this should be done at the earliest age possible. I'm sure everyone agrees that our kids are coming out of their mother's womb with one of these things in their hand. It's too late. Even at birth, it's too late to start teaching them, because they come out, if you give them an Android, they're going to say, I don't like this, I want an iPhone. What is the Android you're doing? And they see us on the phone all day doing this, and then things start showing up at the door. So we really have to teach it as soon as possible to children. And starting to teach children from young ages, even before grade 3, is not all about the technical aspects of finances. It's about developing habits. We teach our children how to brush their teeth as soon as they have their first tooth. We don't explain to them why we're doing this, but we have to do it, and we do. And everything else that we do in life, we start teaching them at a young age, and we start building up on it. That's one reason we do it at a young age. Second one is that parents are still involved with their elementary school kids while the kids are young. They look at their homework, they pay attention to it if they can. And this has been a very good way for us to teach the parents to the kids. It's amazing because we have every time we do a lesson plan, there's actually a handout that goes to home to the parents. It's addressed to the parents. It explains what we did in class and encourages them to continue the education because, as everybody said, it's not just about the kids, it's the parents and the continuation of that learning and practice at home that has to happen because 12 hours of instruction in school, that's just not enough. It has to be practiced at home. But we've noticed that elementary school parents are still involved, but once the kids go into middle school and high school, the parents are becoming pretty much disconnected. Not disconnected, but the kids become their own. This is what we went through as parents. So that's our program in a nutshell. I'm gonna stop here and see if there are any questions. I'm really looking forward to questions from the audience as their challenges because everybody agrees, at least the group that's here, it agrees that this is absolutely needed. It's not just a luxury anymore. It's absolutely needed. But what are the challenges that's preventing us? And we know what the challenges are. There are many different challenges and how we can share our experience, not only here in San Diego, and we're based in San Diego, but from across the world, the way that people have been able to introduce and implement financial literacy in school and during daytime.
Alex, thank you. I'm fascinated by your approach, but don't disagree. And the coming out of the womb with the phone seems almost realistic at this point in life, I got to tell you. So we do have a little time left for Alex's presentation. So we have time if any of the participants, be they presenters or participants, to be quite honest with you, have any questions at this point for Alex? You can raise your hand or you can just jump right on in.
Quiet group today.
Well, I think they're getting their cup filled. I'll say that. I think a lot of folks are getting their cup filled today, and you included.
A lot of information. Yep.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Alex. I think everybody's on the same page, right? This is an incredible group of people coming together. So I appreciate that. So any questions for Alex at this point? All right, seeing none, maybe some come up at the end. Alex, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I move to Lauren?
That's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you for being here and participating. We really appreciate you. All right, Lauren Needle, advisors. Lauren, how are you? Welcome. Lauren's company helps companies and organizations achieve significant impact and deliver on their consideration. You do a lot of work in programs and partnerships in the Bay Area as well as policy advocacy, and much of your work is done with both young people and the adults included in financial literacy. So I'm excited to hear what you have for us, Lauren.
Thanks, Bill. It's great to be here. I've been scribbling notes furiously listening to everybody else. So thank you to the other panelists for great work and great ideas. Let me do like Patrick did, say a little bit more about my background, just
Absolutely.
as it's relevant to this. Got my start years ago as a youth worker in after-school programs. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about this session today is I think after school is this really creative, flexible space to help teach some things that young people might not be getting in school, or augment and build on things that they're learning in school. And I think that financial education, there's a case to be made that it ought to be happening in both settings. Certainly when from my very early days, I used to run a youth center in Baltimore, in South Baltimore, and my job title was director / street worker, and street worker didn't mean what you might think it means. It meant that my job was to literally go up and down the streets of South Baltimore, finding young people and inviting them to come into our youth center and work with us on different things. And our young people were smart and good survivors and practical and creative. And they came in for things that they thought were relevant for them. And I never forgot that, because I think, one of my themes today is just, this is so important and so relevant to young people's present and their futures. And it's important to engage them that they see that in what all of us are offering to them. A little bit more about my background. I was for years the director of an organization called San Francisco Peer Resources in San Francisco, and a lot of people on the call are probably familiar with the peer-to-peer model, where young people are peer counselors and peer educators and conflict mediators and mentors and other things for other youth. We were present in middle and high schools in San Francisco, and we also had a strong after-school presence and had young people learning leadership and running different kinds of programs and getting paid as interns and on on stipends and so forth with us in a number of settings around the city. And I mentioned that partly because that also brought home for me the importance of financial literacy. We were putting these checks in young people's hands, which I was so proud of and so happy that we were not only offering them programs to be part of and communities to be part of, but real money. But then the young people kind of sometimes didn't know what to do with that real money, and sometimes it didn't benefit them much because it came in one hand and left the other hand pretty quickly. And so we thought we needed to learn some things about that. People are familiar with San Francisco might know the Beacon Centers, which is one of the major after-school models that has operated in San Francisco and borrowed from other cities and their versions of it in other cities. And we partnered with the Beacon Centers to do some programming that touched on a number of things. And then a few years later, I was the chief of programs at United Way Bay Area, and people are probably familiar with United Ways. In a lot of cities, certainly this was the case at the time in the Bay Area, we both distributed grants to organizations doing great work and ran our own community initiatives that we thought were important. And one of the big initiatives that touched on financial literacy was called Jobs Plus. We worked with the city of San Francisco and the mayor and a number of community organizations and about 100 employers to start creating summer employment and year-round employment for young people. And we, based on the team's experience, not just mine, we thought, well, okay, young people are going to have money coming in. There needs to be some education for them around financial literacy as well. So we set about solving that. So just to share that background with you, and let me stay with Jobs Plus for a moment, Bill, because you've been asking everybody, so what was the program design? How did it work? So we were essentially helping young people get jobs with a number of employers, big companies like Chevron, corner stores and restaurants, so everything from big to small in San Francisco. And companies could choose to bring the young people onto their payroll or have us administer the payroll for them, because for some of them that was a benefit not to have to deal with that. And our jobs, it was anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks, and then for year-round employment, it depended on the job and the employer and so on. And our goal was to have young people learn skills, have a good experience, learn about what it takes to show up in the workplace, and for employers to experience all the magical things young people bring to your organization and the diverse viewpoints and experiences and so on, and to put money in the young people's pockets. And so we built in right from the start a financial education component. I think, by the way, sometimes on panels it's fun to introduce a little variety of opinion or viewpoint or controversial points of view. So here's one. We used some curriculum that was not that good. And when I hear folks like Martha talking about your work or Christian Next Gen's work, I know that curriculum and the quality and availability has progressed a lot in the 10 years since we launched that program. We had some banking partners that came to us and said, you can use our financial literacy curriculum, and it's all ready to go. And we said, okay, great. And we were really busy trying to get a whole big jobs program off the ground. So if that was solved, great, we'll use that. And there was some good content in there for young people understanding money and understanding savings and so on. But, not a surprise, those banks had a purpose, and their purpose was to acquire customers. And so what they really wanted was for the young people to open bank accounts with them. And that was built into the curriculum. And I'm a huge believer in getting unbanked people banked. So that wasn't a bad thing. But where it went from there wasn't necessarily all about the young person's learning. It was more about being a customer of the bank. And so we had some thoughts about that. I'm trying to say it was a mixed thing. There were some good aspects to that. But I think the kind of things that people have talked about here, that Patrick talked about, for instance, about empowering young people, or what Martha said about thinking about building wealth, not just having some money in your pocket, like those kinds of things we didn't have at the time. And I think they really make financial education very effective. The the actual model for delivery, the curriculum was available through our banking partners, but also through our nonprofit partners to the young people, and our staff kind of coordinated that to happen for the young people. And we also spent some time just with the young people ourselves. And I mentioned this too, I think it was Patrick's point about sometimes the staff need some education themselves. I remember one day being in one of our, having one of our young people walk in, and he was so proud because he was holding his first paycheck. And I said, "That's great. Do you know how to read that?" And he said, "No, but I got a paycheck." I said, "Well, do you know what you're going to do with that?" And he said, "No." And so I sat down with him and I said, "Well, let's go through this and then let's talk about what you're going to do." And this was a great kid who, you know, decided after a few weeks of having a paycheck that he was going to, yeah, who's FICA? Great question. He thought FICA was somebody who was reaching into his pocket and taking some of his money, and he wanted that FICA person to stop doing that. But he decided he was going to give 10% of his check to his mom every time to save for him and to contribute to the household expenses. And, you know, a huge piece of learning and a huge step forward as a young person to think about the importance of savings and planning for the future. So opportunities abound, I think, in program settings to help young people acquire the skills and practice the skills. I wanted to say a few things just about what I think are really important elements of financial education for young people, and trying not to repeat what other speakers have already said, because I think it's really on point. But I think, you know, you have the advantage in an after school setting that you can be flexible, you can complement what's happened in school or go beyond that, and you can engage young people in a different and more powerful way. And to be provocative for a second time, I'm kind of up in the air about whether it's better to teach aspects of financial literacy in a classroom, in a school, versus in an after-school setting. And I'm very open to hearing from this smart group of people about why I'm wrong about that. But I think this is such a real-world thing. This is a just-in-time set of skills that needs context. It's different when you're holding a paycheck and you have some money than someone, you know, teaching you what a line item budget looks like, and you know, and you don't have money that you're budgeting for. You don't feel the real impact if your budget is a bad budget. So I think after school programs are such a great place for where the rubber meets the road, and there's the reality of having to manage some money. In Temescal's excellent paper that we all got before this, there was this thing about things like money clubs, which I'm sure people here have done versions of, but having young people have some money to invest or to save or whatever, to work with that, even if it's not a paycheck, I think that's really powerful. And I think to use that to get a bank account, to learn a little bit about investing, to learn what a lot of us have used in our careers about matches. You know, do you have a match to your retirement savings? Do you have a match to other things? Well, you know, a money club program with a match where a young person sets aside $2 and suddenly there's another $1 there from somebody else, and I didn't have to do anything except set my $2 aside. That's a pretty cool lesson. So how do we create those kinds of experiences? And then two more things I've been thinking a lot about. One is in this world of apps and how fast things move, including your finances on your phone, how are we preparing young people to take good advantage of that and not be taken advantage of? I'm just coming from spending years at Google, where I worked on education and built courses that we shared with diverse young people around problem solving and tech, you know, coding and technical skills and so on, and worked with a lot of young people around how you build apps. And now there are all these apps where you can manage your finances and spend money and receive money and so on. But are we preparing young people to use those effectively? Like, you know, a lot of us here probably use Venmo. It's always been a head scratcher to me that Venmo invites you to post publicly all your transactions and what you're doing. And I get that there's a social media driver to that, but really, is that a wise thing to do for young people to tell who they're giving how much money to, and open up the door for somebody who's looking who would I go after first? Who seems to spend a lot of money pretty freely? You're offering that information to the world. And maybe there's a counter argument to that, but you know, how do young people think smartly about that? Martha also talked about predatory lending, and so many of those apps that run really cool commercials and they look really cool on your phone are really all about getting you to spend money or put your money in their hands, and they make money from that. And that may be something that's a win-win for you, but you have to understand that those business models are first and foremost about making money for the company that built the app. And so how does a young person make good choices about which ones to use and how to manage their use of it and so on? Last thing I wanted to say was just there's a whole component to financial literacy, which I think has to do with public benefits. And Christian, you were talking about kids bringing the curriculum home to your families. At least I think that was you. And our last speaker was talking about this as well. I think, we have public benefits as a society because we believe people should have resources, and I believe people are entitled to them. And whatever your condition is, you ought to be using everything out there that's a financial public benefit because it maximizes your well-being. And two examples that quickly come to mind, top of the headlines recently has been student loans and student loan forgiveness. And for young people whose parents are carrying heavy student loans, maybe they're millennials or Gen X's, and there's a chance to reduce that burden on your parents and then on you as a young person, as the next generation. Why wouldn't you want to get educated about that, help your parents take advantage of that? I just had a circumstance where I learned something about Social Security. My wife has a cousin who is qualified for Social Security. It isn't very much, but we were investigating how could we increase her Social Security. We learned that you are entitled as a recipient of Social Security, if you were married to somebody, to the higher of your former spouse's payment or your payment. And in her case, her former spouse had earned a lot more money. So we went back to the federal government and said, gee, can she have the higher rate? And they said, yes. And they gave it to her. Imagine young people helping their parents and their grandparents who are receiving different federal payments to figure out how to qualify for the most benefits that you could have, which means money in the hands of the family to take care of yourselves and do what you need to do. So I think there's something important there as well. So I'll stop there, but those are some of my thoughts. And again, I just think there's so much good information here today. So thank you to everybody.
Laura, that was amazing. Do you have to stop?
I'm willing to bet somebody that the audience are going, yeah, that's enough. Let's move on.
Okay. Come on. Thank you though. That was all really priceless stuff, man. I wanted to comment on a couple of things you said before we move forward. I realized once I went from being a site coordinator, expanded learning program, to a director or one who managed multiple programs, that I was now working with two sets of young people. I was working with the end user, which is our students, but I was always working with young people, to your point, that this was their first job, right? This is their first experience into the work world. And we're hoping to get more of them. Make no mistake, we need them in expanded learning. But in my focus, it was always pretty much the students, frankly. But knowing what I know about that I'm raising two sets of kids, I feel like I missed something when I didn't think about sharing that with the young people that worked for me, right? So I think that's hugely powerful. I mean, something I feel like I should have done now that you said it, and I'm feeling a little bad I didn't, but there's still a chance to keep moving on, right, and getting that right. So I really think that's a huge point, because for a lot of our folks, if this is their first job, that is a big deal, right? It's a big deal. Also could add to their sustainability and staying in your program, right? If they manage their money correctly. So I think you bring a hugely dynamic point for those of us who are in administration and expanded learning to think about the young people that are working for us. In your I forget, it was a question or your provocative thing. Instructional day versus expanded learning for financial literacy? Yes, both. I don't think it's one or the other. I will tell you, we do a lot of workforce stuff, right? Explaining to kids how to get a job, employability skills. They go through that in their CTE class, or they go through it in class. But somehow or other, it means more with the people on the outside go and I would call reinforce that. It's not like it's new. We're not the first ones bring it to them. But I kind of think with young people, especially our high school kids, when your teacher, counselor, or parent tells you, it's like Charlie Brown's mom, right? Wah, 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 wah. Yeah. Okay. But when somebody comes in and reinforces it, that's not in that typical structure or expanded learning, folks, we find that it's actually, for whatever reason, taken more seriously, right? Like they actually think about it and absorb it. So I don't think it's one or the other. I really think it's both. And expanded learning programs are supposed to expand on what is taught in the instructional day by providing things kids can touch, do this, that, and the other. So I think, to your point, it's taking what's learned in the instructional day and giving it context and giving young people reinforcement and a chance to look at that. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's been my experience as well. And I think Patrick said it so articulately, talking about his own experience, but young people get the opportunity to form a different kind of relationship in an after school setting with staff, with older young people, with peers, and there's a real power in that, and there's a comfort level, and there's an interest level, and there's a curiosity, and are you somebody like me that I want to learn from, and why are you doing what you're doing? And as someone who designed and managed peer programs, where think, for example, about high school youth being guides and advisors to other high school youth, if one young person figures out something really cool and starts talking about it, a bunch of other young people want to know what it is and how did you do it and how do I do it. And there's a lot of power in that dynamic as well. And I think if you apply that to financial literacy, if you had young people doing mock investing or doing real investing at a very small scale with a few dollars within your program budget and so on, and somebody made $100 investing, I would bet the other young people would all want to line up and know exactly what did you do and exactly how did you do that, and you'd have some very interested parties. So I think that the extended learning space just offers so much opportunity around this topic.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the one last thing, we talk about parents, right? And I think too, and especially I've worked in, Martha, I know you do, and others may, with very significant Latino communities, where trust of banks and trust of government and trust of financial institutions is a real challenge for them, and understandably so. And so a lot of times when we've done with those populations has been very much hoping that we're, when we talk about, because I had the same experience, the bank sponsored us by giving us some money to do our workforce program. So we felt like we should bring them in to do financial literacy because we were going to give them a check, right? We needed to do that. I found that your description of what they present is pretty accurate. Not that it's bad, and you said that as well. But establishing a bank account and going to the bank rather than going to the liquor store or the cash checking place is definitely an advantage for folks, right, compared to that. So a lot of times we're hoping that the financial literacy and the things that we give them, even that the bank gives them, actually goes home and encourages. Hopefully they're going to go home and teach up, right? They're going to explain to mom and dad that maybe this is a better option for the family, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of power in that, as you pointed out.
Absolutely.
All right. Lauren, anything else before we go? Any questions from the field or the panelists? Anybody on the call? For Lauren, he obviously took a lot of notes. He's listening to everybody's stuff. Or anybody else on the panel? Anybody else that would like to ask questions or share or cross share here? The forum is open for you.
You mean about other things, or because I'd love to share.
Okay.
I love everything that everybody is saying. It's just so much in this whole space of, of financial education. It sure hasn't worked. And, it's interesting because I had a meeting just before this with a bank that's sponsoring a program for us. And I have the exact same issues about, the last thing I want is to be seen as a marketing thing for, banks. And in some respects, what we're teaching is to not give banks so much money, which is kind of funny, really. So I have some of those similar things. We have, we're not so much focused on the content. We have a game where you practice making financial decisions in rounds and scenarios. So, and it's, you're thrown into all the things you have to make. It's especially good for people who are going through a change in financial responsibility, because, that's when you're kind of like, there's all these things to decide. And so it's, a place to practice, because where else can you practice? And you don't need money to put into it, because the people who need money, who need to get the financial education quite often don't have money to put into an app or something like that. So it's definitely to practice. We also, Patrick was talking about, I think it was Patrick was talking about it's not just about money, it's also about your time and your energy. And what's crazy to me is like the people that talk a lot about financial education, especially like how to get out of poverty, is, oh, you need to budget and save. You cannot get out of poverty by budgeting and saving. It's like, what? you have to invest something. And, you know, if you don't have money, what do you invest? Well, your time and your energy, right? So I loved what you were saying about all that. You know, it's definitely an example for me of one of the situations, because, you know, how do you can tell people, I mean, everybody knows to save, right? Everybody know, you know, there's lots of things people know to do, but how do you know? There was a kid that played, and when he got extra money, he didn't put it into the savings or investment, he just spent it. And I was like, why is he doing that? And so what's really important to me is the game, the discussions, and the educational content are all really important together. But we talked about passive income. We were talking about savings, you know, the interest on savings. And what he said was, you mean Lone Star cards? Well, for those that aren't from Texas, that's food stamps. And you cannot put food stamps into savings or investments. So his whole reality was, you get money, you spend it. So through the game, we could show him, well, what if you could instead do this and, you know, make money from your money, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's, you know, where you can try different strategies and do different things. So, yeah, you know, our goal is to mentally morph millions of mindsets about money. It's Mentomorph at mentomorph.com. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to, you know, I know there's lots of curriculum out there. If the game supports your curriculum, or you want our curriculum or whatever, you know, and it's because it's scenario based. You can do one scenario with this content, or you can do 4 scenarios with this content, or, you know, but it really is about giving them a chance. I'll tell you one more thing. So I played it with in a summer camp with a bunch of kids, and I forgot my power cord, so I had to go back. And the next day, you know, I go back and they come running up to me and said, I finished all the scenarios and this is the score I got, and whatever. So I know they kept playing, which was really affirming to me that, you know, that it's something that engages them. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity. I'm thrilled to be with people that care about this. And yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
All right. Thank you, Meredith. Awesome.
Susan, yeah.
I'm sorry. Last name is Meredith.
2 first names. My maiden name
you
was
know.
Kenny. My maiden name was Kenny, so my brothers had 2 first names too, or do have 2 first
There
names.
you go. Well, forgive me. Thank you, Susan.
That's fine.
Also, you know what? I'd love to loop in my teammate Malia, because I know you have a lot of experience both professionally and personally in this particular vein, and wonder if you have some thoughts and comments you might add.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. There's so many things to think about when it comes to like financial literacy pieces. My previous role, we did a lot with the workforce, and why were people leaving and why were they struggling? And I mean, across the board, I think we know it's like our workforce a lot of times are from the same communities who need the same knowledge and resources. And what we did at our old agency is we had coaches, right? Because it's one thing to teach them and to practice. It's another thing to create the habit, right? Of doing it and accountability. And so we had life coaches that was like, okay, we're going to do a budget. Well, we're going to have accountability. We're going to check in with you. It's going to be a safe environment. It was also access to resources in the community that they may not know about. And then, you know, I do a lot of advocacy and policy work, which I know others in here do too. And I appreciate that. And I think making sure that our people are actually getting livable wages and working on other systems that really perpetuate the issues of poverty and other communities not getting the supports and resources, not being set up for success from the get-go, I think is something we also need to talk about and continue to teach others on that piece, because the whole like, the reason you're poor is because you drink Starbucks is nonsense, right? We know the purchasing power of this generation is nothing like previous generations. And arguably it's worse than the Great Depression that nobody wants to talk about. And so these young people are gaslit into like, well, just work harder, right? Just save. I'm an only parent on 1 income, never gotten child support. And I can tell you, it is not that easy, right? I put myself through school. I have a great job and great career. And it is a struggle for me to get by. And with everything going on with inflation and things like that. And so I think we need to remember the tender love and care, right? Because there can be shame and all this pressure on these kids and these families to like, why am I still struggling? Why is this an issue? And so We don't want them to give up, but I think we need to push back on these systems that really don't work. Because what I worry about is that we push them into, in my background, I went to school business, okay? So I took a lot of accounting, a lot of finance classes and things like that. And so you're kind of pushed into a system that really wasn't created for you, especially being like a woman of color and an only parent raising my son. Like, it's not that easy and it can be frustrating. And so kids can shut down or families may shut down. So we need to really remember those perspectives when going into this work. I can go on and on. I've been loving this panel. I really appreciate all the dialogue and conversation. Would love to stay in touch. But Bill, I can go on and I'll stop there. And I think Alex has his hand up.
Yes, he does. Thank you, Malia. But well put as always, and I know heartfelt. So thank you. Yes, you're awesome. Alex, what's going on over there? I got your hand up, man.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I know we all talk about where we get our curriculums and sponsors and how banks push their curriculum into things, and they're not necessarily ulterior motive, but that's their business. We've been very fortunate for the past 5 years to actually be sponsored by the San Diego County District Attorney Office. They have recognized that, and we're not the only one. There is a large group of organizations that the DA has kind of recruited, and it's been really well because the DA has realized that a lot of challenges that our youth face and they get into trouble is because their lack of their education, financial literacy, a lot of different things in there. So we've been and their sponsorship is wide open. The sponsorship that we get, they're actually our largest sponsor now. So hopefully there are other areas where traditional funding maybe have some attachment to it, but I know that our district attorney is really great at sponsoring projects that's helping keep kids out of the judicial system. They have a lot of stuff going on. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. Any thoughts or comments for Alex before I move to the next person? All right. Thank you again, Alex. Patrick, what you got for us, bud?
Thank you, Bill. And I just want to say thank you for everybody, for Christian, Martha, Susan, even what you shared, Alex, Lauren, just everything that everybody's been sharing has just been right on. And I definitely wanted to hit on what Malia was talking about, the fact that a lot of these systems weren't created to benefit those, especially people of color, to be able to tap into. One of the things at the Y, we have this big audacious goal to be able to end poverty within San Francisco Bay Area, which is like a very, very big goal. But one of the things I always say is we have a lot of workforce development programs, and just getting into the workforce isn't going to end poverty. Just like you were saying, Suzanne, saving is not going to end poverty. And if we look at in the last year, what made the industry that made the most millionaires last year were investments in real estate. Real estate has made the most millionaires over the past 100 years. And so when we really talk about that, we're really looking at your job isn't going to move you out of poverty. That's the truth. And until we start to educate our young people on understanding real estate and looking at real estate as a business, that you can go in and you can purchase property. And even if you can't buy a multifamily, that you can buy a single family and you can house hack by living in one room and renting out the other rooms, that there are a lot of different strategies that you're able to work on so that you can start to move. And one of the things that I call it now, this time that we're in, I call it the digital renaissance. With the rise of AI and all this new technology, there's a lot of opportunities for young people to start businesses that are faster, leaner, and stronger than ever before. And now we have the ability to make more money on the side while we're able to moving towards financial freedom. And I definitely agree that there are a lot of systems. And I said it before, you asked the question, Bill, who do we organize with? And a lot of times I said the same thing. We don't always pull in some of the traditional bankers because we realize that a lot of these systems are set in place to harm are people who are trying to move towards financial freedom. So yeah, I think that's why it's so important that we're recognizing. I think Martha, you were saying bringing in people who represent our community to come and say hey, here's what financial freedom actually looks like for me, right? Versus a banker who might come in and says, oh yeah, here's the things that you need to do, right? We know that putting your money into a bank account, you're actually losing money. Because if the bank is only giving you, I mean, if you find a great bank that's giving you 2% return, that's amazing, right? But you're not going to find that, right? And so if that's the case, and we're looking at inflation being 2%, your money is going down. Your dollar today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So putting your money into a savings account is not going to benefit our young people. And so we're like, what we're talking about is going beyond just saving your money, right? It's like, it's not just enough to save your money or to not spend your money on a bunch of things. Like, you actually have to be progressing, right? We're on a reverse, like a sidewalk, a moving sidewalk that's going in the opposite direction. If you're standing still, you're going backwards. And so we actually have to be like, teach our young people to be a little more aggressive and think about different strategies. And one of those things we always talk about is like, one of your biggest resources is your family sometimes. And not every young person has the benefit of being able to rely on their families, but the longer you can stay at home and be with your parents, like my wife and I, we moved in with my mom-in-law, and we stayed there for a year before I purchased our property. But if you have the ability to lean on other people, it's like thinking outside of the norms that have been set, to be able to say like, hey, they're not going to tell you this, but here's some tools that can help move you in this direction. So to your question, Bill, about like, does it work in a classroom? Or I think Lauren asked this question, is it better in a classroom? Is it better in after school program? I definitely agree. But I also I think that it's going to be even more beneficial when it's outside of the school and it comes into our everyday life. And it's like really looking at our situations and say, how do we make something different out of this situation? So I just want to, I just want to drop my 2 cents before I move on.
No, man, that was $2 worth. That wasn't 2 cents worth. Stop it. So I agree with you 110%, especially if we're looking at this in a nationwide thing and we see what, perhaps not in California, but in other places, what they're trying to do in education, which is actually to suffocate, right, the progress and work toward equity, right? So I appreciate your comments even tenfold, just for that, because not all of us are in a place that's necessarily a little more progressive minded, right? And we need to protect our young people from that. So thank you very much. Martha, I know you had something to add, and then
Yes.
Susan, I will defer to you.
No, I agree. Again, panelists, it's been very inspirational. And along with that, it's like not having students kind of trapped into that bank mentality, especially when we're also thinking about, okay, what is ethical banking and how our investments are going to be pushing forward our communities. So really having our students look into what we can do to not fall into that systemic system that is not assisting us to move forward, and finding those investments that are going to be generating wealth for not just the individual, but our communities. So one of the things that we are doing now is almost like what Susan Meredith says, that like practicing how to invest and really having students think outside oh, I didn't know we could do that. Oh, I thought you had to have a lot of money to do that. And having them understand those processes so that they can little by little start to like build their empire. And we do use like a lot of games so that they could start to get that sense of building. But when you build, you can't just build alone. You have to bring, everyone that is around you, build them up. So a lot of the things that we're focusing on doing is bringing up everyone, not just the individuals. And I think it's really important to, like you all said, not just keep it within ourselves, but be able to spread it out and have those students be those advocates, be that outrage, so that we can change things.
Thank you, Martha. Well said. Thank you so much. Susan, what might you have to add?
Well, I have a question, but first I do want to say, I don't know, we've done a lot of different research things. 18.6% of people are unbanked or underbanked. So those people could be benefit by the bank because they're going to payday loans and things that are just exorbitant. So there is definitely a place for banks to be involved. But my question, and I think a lot of different people have said this, I really, and I'm wondering if there's anything out there of people that are doing something with families, so that the adults and the kids together, because that's what we're trying to do. Because kind of my ideal scene would be at Christmas time having a kid playing a kid scenario, one adult playing a household scenario, one playing a business scenario, and a retiree playing a grandparent playing a retiree scenario, and all talking about the concepts. That's, ideally to me. But I'm curious what's out there for, the kids and the parents to learn together, because it really is for everybody. And then they can have conversations in households. Is anybody doing things like that?
I can add something in there. Yes, it would be a great idea to do that, but it's nearly impossible. Not that there is no material or no willingness. Based on our experience, actually, when we started our program, it was aimed for adults. But we quickly realized that adults need it, they do recognize it, but it's their ego or whatever that is, that they don't want to go sit in even if it's a game file. Especially here in the US, because we do work with a lot of people outside of US. They take advantage of our programs in a heartbeat. It's all provided at no cost. But then what we've seen here in the US, adults sometimes do register for the program, but they don't even show up. So that's why we are concentrating more and more on the youngest age possible. We have had a handful of people that have done our program. Like last year, we had a grandmother who did it with her third grader, and they did the whole program virtually, and they loved it. But it's not necessarily, even at schools, when we do tell the schools that we would love to have a session with parents, they're up for it, but parents just don't show up.
I mean, we have been having parents and kids together, and it's fun where they compete against each other. So I'm just curious if other people are doing it. So yeah.
I will say in California, that those that have assets grants or 21st century grants for their high school programs do have a very specific opportunity to do so. They have a family literacy component that they are required to provide, which family literacy could be teaching folks how to use computers. It could be teaching them how to read. It could be teaching them financial literacy. And it is something that all of those grants have a component of. So the opportunity is crafted in there, though I don't know of anybody that has taken, and I'm sure somebody has, I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but I don't know of anybody that has necessarily taken advantage of the financial literacy, or excuse me, family literacy component to promote necessarily financial literacy. Typically it is, in my experience, it has been done with the students, but the opportunity exists, and I would suggest it's a great idea.
Yeah, where do you find out about, you say family literacy?
Family literacy is a component of 21st century funding in California for high school programs, specifically called assets programs. They're 21st century community learning centers. Community learning center is very key there, right? But there is a family literacy component that is required, albeit those that provide the program have a choice on what they provide for family literacy. But the opportunity is certainly there and cut out for that to happen. Thank
you. I appreciate that.
I cannot speak for other states, unfortunately, but that is what happens in California. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And in answer to the question about our credit unions better than banks, I would say yes, they have a different incentive, in my opinion. But I mean, I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on that. From Spiha, is that how you say your name?
It's from Sam.
Oh, Sam. Anybody else have an opinion on that?
I don't know. Personally, I have both because there's an advantage to either one. So yeah, I see it from that perspective, but there are differences, but I think, to me, I'd probably present both, right? I mean, and what the advantages and disadvantages of those might be. Because I think financial literacy covers all of this, right? It's not specific to banking or credit unions or anything. I think it's the whole thing. So very good question, Sam. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree.
Patrick, please, go right ahead. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I would agree. I think I think it's also about knowing who and who is it and also what are they looking for, and looking at the goals. It really depends on what you want to do. I think there are people who might just want access to their funds and want to be able to liquidate quickly, and just want to make sure that they have access to their funds, and a credit union might not always be available to be able to have access in that way. And so I definitely think that it's really about your goals and what you're looking for. So I agree. I think that like having a bank account, having a credit union, having investment accounts, diversifying is important. I think that's an important piece of financial literacy, is not just relying on one income source or one banking strategy or one saving strategy or investment strategy.
Well, I understood. I guess I understood the question differently. For individuals, that's true. But are you saying for working with credit unions versus banks? Because that's what I was thinking. I mean, credit unions, you almost always have lower interest rates on what do you call it, credit cards, which is definitely good from a personal standpoint. But for working with credit unions, it seems to me they have more of a community, or community banks, they have more of a kind of a community focus than we just want to make money and get more customers. I don't know if other people have had that experience. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends. I can speak to this on the advocacy front, that, in different states, when we've worked with coalitions of advocates, there have been representatives from, state bankers leagues as well as state credit union leagues who have been equally passionate about the need for sort of unbiased, not-for-profit financial education. So I have kind of seen, just like a lot of things in personal finance writ large, the answer is sometimes an unsatisfying "it depends." But there are big-hearted, kind people in just about every industry out there, just like there are some rotten sort of bad actors in every industry you can imagine too. And so it depends.
Fair enough. All right. Any other thoughts or comments? I do have to tell you, this has been an incredibly great conversation, folks. Really.
Bill, I was going to add in, and I don't have the answer, but
Sure.
just thinking about the engaging families and parents and getting them involved. I can just speak from personal experience. Like, we don't have a lot of free time, right? Like, we're in survival mode a lot of the time. And so finding, like, how do you reach families, like really being intentional with that piece. And like, you could put on a Saturday maybe when I'm not working, but like I have a laundry list, right, of things to do. And even though it would help set up a family in the future, it's really hard for them when they're like just trying to get by day, for a plethora of reasons. And so again, that's why I kind of go back to like, we need culture shifts also, so we free up like the capacity of American families, that they actually have time to like focus and not be so stressed and not have all this like mental health issues, right? They're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, working 3 jobs, like just to get by. So to think about growth, it's almost impossible. And so it's just something I'm always going to bring up, because I am one of those that works, multiple jobs on top of my career. And there's been plenty of opportunities for me to go to things, and I was just exhausted, right? Or I just didn't physically have the time. And so, transportation, all that kind of stuff, access to internet, language barriers. A lot of times people just don't feel welcomed, right, in a lot of different environments. So I know a lot of folks have been talking about this piece, but until we get to the point where our people just aren't so exhausted at the end of every day, it's going to be an uphill battle, because there's financial literacy literally everywhere, and we still have the issues that we have. So again, it's trying to beat the rat race, but maybe we should look at a different wheel.
What do you think would make it worthwhile, attractive enough to do something? You know what I mean? Like, it's always a
personal assistant that's going to cook and clean.
Yeah.
And I'm being dead serious. Like,
No, I get
right?
it.
Like,
I get it. I get it.
because it's not even childcare. Because it's like, I literally, like, even if I had someone to be with my kid, like, I have to do all the things, you know? And so it's somebody literally reducing what is expected of me to survive in this world,
Yeah.
to be able to even mentally show up, right? And maybe that's the only time they actually have with their kids or family, right? So if you're choosing between quality time with your child versus like that part, like that's hard too, right? And so
Well, I mean, as financial educators, what would make it attractive enough? Because to me, it's a matter of if we can make a fun experience with the parent and the kid, quality time together, that's
right.
kind of where the approach we're looking at is how can we make it enjoyable and educational for the parent with their kid, you know? I mean,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
that's a great approach for sure, because you're marking more than, you know, one thing on a list of all the things that need to get done, which is, especially if it's free and accessible for a family to do something that kids and families enjoy. And sometimes, unfortunately, people just don't have, like we've talked about, the gift of time. Like they would love to take their kid to a free event that's fun. Like I've been there and I just literally couldn't. And maybe it was just because my day started at midnight because I was trying to go to college and go to school at the same time. Like that's just the reality. And this is, again, my personal experience. It's not others. I just wonder because there's so many wonderful things like out there and people like on this call who deeply care. And even our big, you know, even our government cares and banks care, and we're still not figuring out the answer. And so to me, it just, I don't know, something significantly has to change too. And so, sorry, I know I'm taking us in a different directions. These are just
No,
the things that are on
I
my
think
mind.
all your points are really valid. It's just saying that as financial educators, what can we do to be able to provide the value that you do need in the face of all those considerations and you and other people? That's really the question of, you know, I think is before us is how do we make it where it provides enough value to you that it is worth the investment of your time and energy in the face of all those other considerations.
So before I go to Martha, you still have something, I think. The one thing I would suggest, especially in this vernacular or this thing, that's where expanded learning programs can possibly be the most effective to figure out a delivery model or time or space that makes that work, because we do have the flexibility and we should be listening to what's needed locally or from our parents and from our folks. So those answers I'm suggesting could be different depending on who you are and where you are and what's going on. But I would also suggest that expanded learning programs generally have the flexibility and ability to adapt to what might be the best time to do that or the best approach to do that. So I think that's kind of our strength in trying to figure, or our strength or our opportunity perhaps in trying to figure that out. Martha, I think
No, I was just gonna address what Maria said. It's like, yeah, it's really important to take into consideration, you know, what a family is going through, especially after what we went through with the pandemic. A lot of our kids, they lost parents, they lost, you know, they lost homes, they lost situations. So it's like, okay, how to be able to bring them together so that it's not well, now I have to go to, you know, I'm working just to like make sure that we survive at this point in time. And for us, it's really meeting them where they're at. So it's one of the things that we've been working with our kids is having them be able to do presentations, almost like a, you know, go out and give information of like, hey, this is, you know, these are our informations, whether it's on the app or whether it's we recorded it on Zoom or whether like all these venues, just so that you can get that information when a parent comes to pick up the kid, just being able to talk to them for like, you know, a few minutes on like certain things. We have boards where there's like topics of interest where like if a parent is interested in that, we can, you know, give them information. So it's not a full time, you know, like hour 30 minutes, but it's like little bits of information here and there to be able to come together. And then when, you know, when they're able to attend, when they're able to come in, they already have some information, but then we could move on to the next step. We've also done those, implemented those opportunities for families to come together where we provide dinner. So you don't have to worry about dinner because we're providing that, where we're providing childcare, so that if you have little ones, we take care of the little ones while you're focusing on the event, and we have dinner and we have all these things so that, yeah, we understand the stress. It's like we have like opportunity drawings. So like, hey, here's a whole bunch of like, here's a laundry of, basket with all the stuff that you need when you go to the laundry. It's like, so you don't have to focus, or worry about that, or about getting them stuff that they can use. They see a value, especially when you're like, dude, how am I going to survive till next week to be able to come to an event that you have people that understand. Again, there's no judgment, there's no nothing, like we're all struggling. So being able to just come in, and also when you're focusing on that financial, also focusing on that, that spiritual, that mind, that like, okay, you're okay, so that they can make it to next week and be able to then worry about, okay, what's finances going to look like. That's all.
All right, Martha, thank you for making my point. The local things you do to get folks in the room to be able to do this kind of thing. You just gave some great examples of exactly the point I was trying to make, so thank you. Okay, folks, it's 11:56, which means we have 4 minutes left, and I do want to respect everybody's time. I do, however, think that there was a slide deck that I did not pay homage to our sponsor, How Kids Learn, and so on and so forth. Malia, could you bring those slides back up? I'm sorry. I think I did a disservice by not going through them as I should have. I think we scrolled down. So let me start here. Temescal and Associates, How Kids Learn. Our principal, Sam Piha, is on the call with us. There is a briefing paper on this promoting financial literacy for youth programs. If you have not seen this, I suggest you definitely take a look at it or download it and share it with all of the folks that you think this might help. Temescal and How Kids Learn has a long history of briefing papers on the expanded learning field, all of which are pretty foundational things. So I think our next slide is about more opportunities Temescal and How Kids Learn has. But I can tell you, in being with them over, now probably 18 years or so, the information and the opportunities and the resources that are there. Here's an example of some of the webinars that have been done before that you can see. I also suggest you go to the website. Lots of research papers, lots of information. And again, this has all been very foundational things that have helped our field over the last 20 years or so, and will continue to do so. So these are always recorded. I think I'm supposed to tell you that. They're all recorded, so this will also become part of the library that rests within the How Kids Learn website. And in closing, we really want to thank our panelists for their participation, to all of you for attending the webinar today. And I have to tell you, this was a phenomenal webinar. I'm a guy who's been in high school programs for 20 years. I can tell you the financial literacy we used to give back in the day. I've been doing this a long time. Our kids were getting a check. We gave them financial literacy. The bank came out, not faulting anybody at the bank. They're doing what they do. But that was really the extent of the resources we have. There were no real resources to that point. And I am absolutely walking out of this webinar today feeling really excited and really thrilled that those of you who have shared, and I'm sure there are others out there, but those of you who have shared have taken this to a completely different level. You have a completely different perspective on this that I absolutely am thrilled and excited about, because this is stuff that our young people really need. I suggest a lot of our adults really need it. I'll just be right honest with you, but I don't think there's a lot of people that don't need this stuff. But it has not been part of the curriculum. It has not been part of the course of study. It hasn't been there for years, and thank God you folks and other folks like you are out there doing this work and promoting this thing, because I think this will make a huge difference especially to our underserved families and our underserved folks and folks that are marginalized, because they need to have these things to be better prepared to do the battle that they have to do, in our hopes to create a more equitable society and more equitable opportunities. So thank you again to all of our great guests. I'm telling you, you guys left me really enthused. I'm actually feeling pretty good about where financial literacy is going in the modern times. It's finally taken off. So I appreciate you all. And again, I want to thank especially Sam Piha, How Kids Learn Foundation, and Temescal and Associates for their great sponsorship of this. And I hope that you all have an incredible weekend, and thank you for starting my Friday off in an incredible way.